I didn't do it. I swear. Alex's shout echoed down the prison corridor as they shoved him roughly into a cold, gray cell. The clang of the door closing behind him rang in his ears, a reminder that he was now trapped in a place he had never imagined, accused of a crime he didn't commit. At only 20 years old, Alex had seen hardship before, but nothing had prepared him for the nightmare of prison life. He was scared, angry, and filled with disbelief. In a matter of days, his life had been ripped apart. The trial had been a blur, and before he could process what was happening, he was here, surrounded by strangers, in an environment thick with tension and suspicion. Every glance felt like a threat, every sound set his nerves on edge. Alex kept his head down, trying not to draw attention to himself, hoping desperately that somehow, this would all end soon. But as the days stretched into weeks, Alex realized that survival meant adapting. He forced himself to eat in the crowded mess hall, to blend into the background. And that's where he first noticed John, a quiet, older man who seemed different from the rest. Unlike the other inmates, who wore expressions hardened by anger or hopelessness, John's face was calm, thoughtful, and he didn't seem to get involved in the power plays and alliances that defined prison life. One day, as Alex picked at his food, a quiet voice reached him across the mess hall. "New guy." Alex looked up, his guard instantly up, but John's face held none of the aggression he'd come to expect. "You look lost," John said with a gentle smile. "Like a fish out of water." Alex hesitated but sensed something trustworthy in John's calm demeanor. "I don't belong here," he mumbled, sitting down across from him. John nodded, understanding in his gaze. "Neither did I. But that doesn't mean it's easy." Over the next few weeks, Alex found himself gravitating toward John. They would talk during meals and in the exercise yard, where John began teaching Alex the unspoken rules of survival. He shared tips on how to avoid trouble, when to stay quiet, and when it was worth standing up for oneself. Alex soon learned that John had been in prison for over 20 years, locked up for a crime he maintained he hadn't committed. "Back then, I was like you," John told him one evening as they walked the perimeter of the yard. "I had dreams, wanted to make a difference." John had been involved in civil rights work in his youth, fighting against injustice, rallying for change. But a single accusation, a botched trial, and a system eager to make an example out of him had cost him everything. Alex found himself drawn to John's story, feeling a shared sense of injustice. As they talked, he began to let go of some of the anger that had filled him since his arrest. He realized that he wasn't alone, that John understood his pain in a way no one else could. As the weeks turned into months, their friendship grew. John became a mentor to Alex, helping him adapt, teaching him to find purpose in the smallest acts of kindness and resilience. John's lessons gave Alex strength, and slowly, the young man began to feel a sense of resolve. But just when things began to feel stable, Alex's lawyer brought unexpected news. There was a chance for him to get a new hearing, an opportunity to reduce his sentence, if he agreed to cooperate with the authorities. They wanted him to inform on one of the other prisoners, someone they suspected of running contraband. Alex's heart sank. He had seen firsthand the consequences of snitching, of turning on others, and the danger it brought. Worse, he knew it would mean betraying everything John had taught him about integrity and strength. That night, Alex confided in John, telling him about the offer. John listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When Alex finished, John looked at him with a seriousness he hadn't seen before. "Alex, only you can make this decision," John said slowly. "But remember, whatever choice you make, it has to be one you can live with." I just want to get out of here, John," Alex whispered, feeling torn. "We all do," John replied, sadness in his voice. "But sometimes, freedom comes with a price. Don't let them buy you off if it costs you who you are." Alex spent days wrestling with the choice, pacing his cell, replaying the options over and over. Every time he thought about giving in, he remembered John's words, the quiet resilience in his mentor's face, the strength he'd found in prison. In the end, he made his decision. When he told the guards he wouldn't inform, they sneered, promising that he'd regret his choice. And he did, at first. The guards found new ways to make his life miserable, piling on extra work, isolating him in solitary confinement, anything to punish him for refusing them. But even in the darkest moments, Alex felt a sense of pride. He was stronger than he'd ever thought possible, and he had John to thank for it. When Alex saw John next, the older man's face lit up with pride. "You did good, kid," he said, clapping Alex on the shoulder. "Now you know what it means to stand for something." Months passed, and Alex's spirit grew. John's teachings became his compass, a way to navigate the harshness of prison with dignity. Then, one day, John received news that shocked them both. After years of appeals and good behavior, he'd been granted early release. The authorities had finally acknowledged his declining health, and John was set to leave the prison he had known for decades. The news filled Alex with a strange mix of happiness and sadness. John had become family, and now he was leaving. But even as Alex tried to put on a brave face, he could see the worry in John's eyes. "What's out there for me, Alex?" John asked one night. "It's been so long, the world's changed, and I don't know if I belong in it anymore." "You're free, John. That's all that matters. Everything else, we'll figure it out." Alex's voice was steady, but his heart was breaking. He didn't know if he would ever see his friend again, and the thought was almost too much to bear. On the day of John's release, Alex stood at the end of the cell block, watching as his friend walked down the hall for the last time. Their eyes met, and John nodded, a silent promise passing between them. If they could, they would meet again on the outside, as free men. With John gone, prison felt emptier than ever, but Alex kept his resolve. He began taking on John's role, mentoring new prisoners, sharing the lessons he had learned. And then, one day, the impossible happened. His lawyer called with news that his case was being reviewed. Alex couldn't believe it. After all these years, he might finally get a chance at freedom. Months passed, filled with hearings and waiting, until the day came when Alex was told he would be exonerated. Walking out of the prison gates, he felt the sun on his face, the warmth of freedom he had dreamed about for so long. Stepping out of the prison gates, Alex squinted against the brightness of the sun, feeling its warmth wash over him in a way he hadn't felt in years. The world outside was overwhelming, the colors, the sounds, the faces of people moving freely, each moment a reminder of the freedom he had fought so hard to regain. But amidst the rush of new sensations, one thought filled his mind: he needed to find John. Weeks passed as Alex searched for his old friend. He checked shelters, community centers, and halfway houses, following every lead, every rumor, driven by a single promise: they had vowed to see each other again as free men. Then, one evening, he found him. John was volunteering at a community center on the edge of town, a place that offered support and resources for former inmates trying to rebuild their lives. Alex saw him across the room, stacking boxes, his face marked by lines of age but softened by a sense of purpose. For a moment, Alex just stood there, absorbing the sight of his friend, his mentor, a man he had never thought he'd see again. "John," he called, his voice cracking with emotion. John looked up, and for a heartbeat, his face was filled with disbelief. But then, as recognition dawned, a smile broke across his face. They embraced, holding on to each other as if they were holding on to all the years, all the pain, all the hope that had led them to this moment. They spent hours catching up. Alex told John about his exoneration, the journey he had endured, the lessons he had learned. And John shared his own struggles adjusting to life outside, a world that had moved on without him, but one he was learning to navigate. Over the next few weeks, they worked side by side at the community center, and their conversations shifted from catching up to planning. Both men knew that the challenges they had faced were not unique, countless others had walked similar paths, emerging from prison with broken spirits and few resources to help them start anew. They talked late into the nights, fueled by a shared vision of creating a space where former inmates could find not only support, but a real second chance. And so, Pathways was born. The center they established was more than just a place to get a meal or a bed for the night. It was a place where former inmates could find counseling, job training, and community. They created classes that taught practical skills, from resume building to financial literacy, and they held support groups where people could share their stories, their struggles, and their hopes. Alex and John became role models, mentors for the people who walked through the doors, each new face a reminder of the lives they had left behind. Together, they guided others through the same darkness they had endured, showing them that change was possible, that freedom was more than just leaving a prison, it was reclaiming one's life, one step at a time. One evening, Marcus, a young man who had recently been released, entered the center. His expression was guarded, his eyes filled with the kind of anger Alex recognized all too well. Alex approached him, gently, sharing his own story, how he had learned to channel that anger into something constructive, something healing. As they spoke, Marcus's face softened, and for the first time, he allowed himself to believe in the possibility of change. Marcus quickly became one of their most committed members. He attended every class, volunteered for every shift, and soon, he was reaching out to others, sharing the lessons he had learned from Alex and John. It was a chain reaction, a single act of kindness that continued to ripple outward, affecting lives in ways neither of them could have predicted. Years passed, and Pathways became a cornerstone of the community. The program expanded, opening branches in other cities, its reputation growing as a model of how to support and rehabilitate former inmates. Local media picked up their story, and people from all walks of life began to take notice. Former prisoners who had once felt forgotten now had a place to go, a path forward, thanks to two men who had found hope behind bars. For Alex and John, it was a life's work. They saw people transform, witnessed friendships form, and watched as men and women who had lost everything rebuilt their lives. And through it all, they remained close, sharing in the victories and challenges of the people they served. One day, as they were wrapping up for the evening, Alex turned to John, a look of deep gratitude on his face. "You know, I never would have made it without you. You saved me, John. You showed me what strength really is." John smiled, resting a hand on Alex's shoulder. "Maybe. But you carried that strength all along, Alex. I just helped you find it." As time went on, Alex and John knew it was time to start passing the torch. They had built something bigger than themselves, something that would live on, even after they were gone. They began training others to take over the day-to-day operations, sharing their wisdom, their lessons, the hard-won knowledge that had shaped Pathways into what it was. In their final months at the center, they attended a ceremony where dozens of former members shared their stories, expressing their gratitude for the opportunities, the friendships, and the second chances they had found. Each story was a testament to the impact that Alex and John had made, and as they listened, both men were filled with a deep, quiet pride. When they finally retired, they knew they were leaving Pathways in good hands. The center continued to thrive, expanding its reach, helping more people every day, carrying forward the legacy of two men who had walked through the darkest of places to find light, not only for themselves, but for others. And every so often, Alex and John would return, sitting quietly in the back of a support group meeting, watching as a new generation of mentors and members stepped forward, sharing their stories, offering their strength, continuing the journey that had begun so many years before. In each face, they saw a reflection of their own story, a reminder that true freedom was found not only in breaking down walls, but in building bridges. The years passed, and the impact of Pathways grew beyond anything Alex and John had imagined. Their work became a beacon for those seeking not only a second chance, but a community where they could find acceptance, healing, and hope. Former prisoners who had once felt isolated found a place where they belonged, where they could finally shed the weight of their pasts and start anew. As Alex and John aged, they continued to stay connected to the community they had built, occasionally visiting the center to offer guidance and mentorship to the new leaders and volunteers. They often sat in on group sessions, quietly observing as the younger members carried on their mission. It was during one such visit that Alex noticed a young woman standing alone by the door, hesitant to enter. She looked out of place, and Alex's heart went out to her. She looked like someone carrying a heavy load, just as he had been all those years ago. Alex approached her gently, introducing himself and inviting her to sit with him. Her name was Lisa, and she had just been released after serving 3 years. Like so many others who had come before her, Lisa felt lost, unsure of where to begin. As they talked, Alex shared his own story, recounting his early days in prison, his friendship with John, and how Pathways had transformed his life. He saw her expression shift from guarded to hopeful, and by the end of their conversation, she agreed to come back the next day. Lisa's journey at Pathways marked yet another ripple in the legacy Alex and John had built. She eventually became a mentor herself, guiding others through the challenges of re-entering society. Watching her growth filled Alex with pride, knowing that their work continued to change lives. The community center had become a fixture in the neighborhood, a place where people gathered not only for support but for celebration. Over time, Pathways expanded, opening its doors to anyone who needed a place to belong. Families, neighbors, and former inmates alike found solace in its walls, and the atmosphere buzzed with the warmth of shared stories and experiences. One evening, as Alex and John sat in their favorite spot at the center, John leaned over, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "You know, Alex," he began, "this place, it's more than I ever thought we'd create. We didn't just build a center. We built a family." Alex nodded, his heart full. "It's true. And none of it would have happened without you, John. You were the one who showed me that there's strength in kindness, that no one has to carry their burden alone." John smiled, a hint of nostalgia in his gaze. "I may have lit the spark, but you kept it burning. That's what matters." As they spoke, a group of young volunteers gathered around them, eager to hear their stories, to learn from the men who had started it all. They listened with rapt attention as Alex and John recounted the early days of Pathways, the struggles, the triumphs, and the friendships that had shaped its walls. The volunteers were deeply moved, their respect for Alex and John evident in their faces. For them, Alex and John were more than just founders, they were legends, a testament to the power of resilience and compassion. Years later, as Alex's health began to decline, he found himself reflecting on his journey, on the friendship that had saved him, and the legacy he and John had created. He often thought of the promise he had made to himself on that first day out of prison, that he would make his freedom count, that he would do something meaningful with the life he had been given back. Now, looking at the thriving community center and the countless lives it had touched, Alex knew he had fulfilled that promise. His heart was full, his soul at peace, and he felt a quiet pride knowing that Pathways would continue long after he and John were gone. In his final days, John stayed by Alex's side, just as he had during their days behind bars. They talked for hours, reminiscing about the lives they had built, the people they had helped, and the dreams they had seen come to life. It was a bittersweet time, filled with gratitude and love, each of them cherishing the friendship that had changed their lives. One morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the window, Alex took John's hand and whispered, "Thank you, John. For everything. You're my brother in every way that matters." John squeezed his hand, his own voice thick with emotion. "You're my brother too, Alex. We built something beautiful together, something that will live on." Alex passed peacefully that morning, surrounded by friends and family, leaving behind a legacy that would live on in every life touched by Pathways. At his funeral, former inmates, volunteers, community members, and families gathered to honor his memory, sharing stories of how he had changed their lives, how he had helped them find hope when they thought there was none. John, though heartbroken by the loss, found solace in knowing that Alex's spirit would always be part of Pathways. He continued to visit the center, guiding the younger members, sharing stories of his friend, and keeping Alex's memory alive. And every time he looked at a new face walking through the door, uncertain and afraid, he saw a reflection of Alex, a young man who had found strength, purpose, and a second chance. The legacy of Alex and John became a powerful story within the community, a reminder that friendship, kindness, and resilience could break down even the hardest of walls. And Pathways continued to thrive, a testament to two men who had overcome their pasts to create something lasting and beautiful. In the end, their story was more than just a tale of survival, it was a story of transformation, of two lives intertwined, and of the enduring power of hope. Thank you so much for watching this video and taking the time to explore this fascinating story with us. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us, and God bless us all.